Hey guys, so I mentioned in a recent video, I can't even remember which one, I talked about possibly doing a video about my kind of journey to veganism. So yeah, some of you wanted to see that and I figured, hey, should be an easy video to do. I don't know, I'm not sure how great my memory is. I know I'm gonna get dates of things kind of wrong. I mean, it's been like, I think like 10 years since I first got interested in veganism, became interested in veganism, so yeah, that's quite a while ago, but yeah, so here we go. So I've said before that Joel Fuhrman, his book Eat to Live, is what got me into veganism, and that is true, but I want to go back a little bit farther than that just for some extra context. It started, this would have been probably like 11 or 12 years ago, I want to say. I wanted to just lose a little bit of weight. I was probably a little bit chunky. I don't know, I think I was a little bit chunky. I don't really remember what I weighed or anything. But yeah, I just wanted to lose a little bit of weight. So I had tried exercising first, and I tried doing like cardio and stuff, running, and I hated that. I would do it for like a day or something and it felt terrible. So I stopped that pretty quickly. And then I got into weight training actually. So I got a DVD, it was Kathy Smith DVD. And it was just, I think it was like a 30-minute upper body thing and a 30-minute lower body thing. And it was, lighter weights, kind of fast moving, kind of more of a circuit training thing. I don't think there was much cardio in there, but it was pretty fast moving. And again, using like lighter weights, and I loved it. I really enjoyed doing it. I liked the way that it felt. I like having the sore muscles and stuff, and I liked that I wasn't constantly, because for me, when I would try to do some sort of cardio, it hurt so bad to breathe. It just like when my heart rate would get up and I would have to breathe, and it felt just like fire in my lungs, is how it felt. It took a while for me, I guess, to get over that or get used to it. I think just gradually building up and doing a little bit more cardio and really lifting heavier weights when you are breathing heavy, and it basically is kind of cardiovascular. That was the start of things, and I did lose a little bit of weight doing that, but I knew that I needed to eat healthier as well. And so I started by just doing like the low fat stuff. Like instead of eating Oreos, I would eat, I think they had just come out with like the 100-calorie packs, the little like shitty little dry pieces of Oreo like in the bag, and it's only 100 calories. So satisfying, right? So I tried to do that for a little bit, but I knew it wasn't healthy. I knew I wasn't eating healthy foods. I was just eating a bunch of processed stuff and trying to focus on calories. I credit that to, I had a gynecologist, I believe she was Indian, and she had just kind of in passing criticized our food pyramid for not focusing more on fruits and vegetables. And that always stuck with me for some reason. And so I literally went on Amazon, and I think I typed something like fruit and vegetable diet book, something like that. And Eat to Live was like the first or second thing to come up. And so I clicked on it and I read, because I'd always thought of like dieting as really stupid and really pathetic. And so I was kind of hesitant to get into anything like that. And I knew that a lot of diet books were bullshit, but I read some of the reviews or just the description or something, and it was talking about all of the research in the book and how it was very research heavy, and really legit and like sciencey, and that convinced me to buy the book. So I bought the book not knowing that it was promoting plant-based, not knowing that it was essentially promoting a vegan diet or a mostly, vegan diet. I had no idea that that's what it was promoting. I had always thought that veganism was really stupid. Look, we have canines. I mean, I remember actually thinking that, like, we have canines. Of course we need to eat meat. That was my view of veganism prior to getting this book, prior to getting Fuhrman's Eat to Live. And then I read the book, and as I was reading the book, I was really convinced by the research and everything, and the calorie to nutrient ratio stuff, and eating nutrient dense foods, not calorie dense foods, and the harmfulness of animal products and all of that stuff. So by the end of the book, I was 100% like, okay, this is the way I'm gonna eat now. Now, to be clear, I didn't actually research anything for myself. I didn't look into anything with regard to like the accuracy of the research or whether or not he was cherry picking. I would not have even known that term, I don't think, at the time. It was just like, wow, there are a lot of references in this book, right? There are a lot of footnotes, and if you look back at the citations, wow, you know, there's just a lot of studies referenced in this book, so it must be legit. I mean, that was pretty much the extent of it, and that's why I was convinced by the book. So not exactly rational. So I started trying to adopt this diet, and it was difficult. One thing that made it less difficult was that he did, at least at the time, I have no idea if he's changed his program much at all. I don't think he has, but he had kind of a 90-10 rule, like 90% healthy stuff and 10% whatever you wanted, including non-vegan stuff, which is why I say that it's not really a vegan diet. I think he calls it a nutritarian diet. It's just nutrient-dense foods which happen to be plants. I don't even know if he eats vegan himself, his thoughts on the environment or you know, animal ethics or anything. Yeah, so he had this 10% where you just eat, you know, cookies, whatever you want for that 10%, just to give yourself some leeway and like make the diet easier, essentially. And so I did that. I think for a while I actually calculated, you know, how many calories I was eating and made sure it was like within that 10% thing. I only did that for a little bit. I think I was a little bit more lenient with myself later on, but yeah, I would eat try to eat, even for the 10%, I would try to eat healthy, like berries with whipped cream or something. Because again, at this time, you know, this was just about health. This wasn't about the environment or animal suffering or anything like that. Yeah, so I would often have like berries and whipped cream or a couple cookies, you know, things like that. Just like 100 to 100 calories of like junk food at the end of the day. Like I said, it was difficult mostly because the recipes that he provides or provided in the book were just the worst things ever. They were absolutely disgusting. This like anti-cancer soup that was in there that's just like all vegetables, and oh my god, it was the most disgusting soup I've ever tasted in my life. So many things like that, like cook a baked potato and put salsa on it. Like, what the fuck? I don't want salsa on a baked potato. I mean, it's not the worst thing I've ever eaten, certainly, but when I think baked potato, I think like comforting, cheesy kind of stuff, right? Like a good like vegan like cheese sauce. I don't think salsa. So yeah, that was honestly the thing that made it the hardest, were all the terrible recipes. If I could do that diet now and make it so much tastier, right, than I did then, because I just had no idea. I'd never eaten that many vegetables. I'd never eaten that many fruits before. I had no idea how to prepare these things in like a really tasty way. Prior to that, I was really into cake decorating, which I stopped doing because I found that I couldn't keep myself from eating all the cake. So that was a problem. But yeah, so I was always more into baking than I was into cooking. I could certainly bake some, you know, tasty cakes and cupcakes and cookies and shit, but when it came to like cooking vegetables, I was completely at a loss, and his book was not helpful in any way. It was so lacking in just palatability and you know, recognizing certain flavor profiles and like using enough salt and herbs and stuff like that. So hopefully he's changed that now. I really have no idea. The other thing too is that I really wasn't a huge fan of beans. I am now. I love beans, particularly chickpeas. They are my favorite things. Chickpeas and lentils, probably my favorite things. But yeah, at the time I never really ate beans. I don't know if I ever ate beans before that. Maybe if they just happened to be in something. That was a little bit difficult because the thing about Furman's is what really separates him from like McDougall, if you're not familiar with Furman, is that he's not anti-fat, he's not anti-plant fats at all, and he's also not so pro-grains. So he actually, I believe his diet put a limit on grains, like only like one serving or something of grains a day, or two, maybe something like that. There was a limit put on grains, whole grains. Whereas like beans, unlimited beans, right? Unlimited legumes, unlimited fruits and vegetables. Actually, fruits might have been limited, like sweet fruits, for if you specifically were trying to lose weight. I'm not sure about that, but I know vegetables were not limited, beans were not limited. Again, like processed stuff, like oils were limited. Yeah, so those are the kind of two things that really separates his diet from like a starch solution McDougall diet. To follow this diet, you have to cultivate a love of beans. That was difficult for me. I got started by actually chickpeas. They had some like packaged falafel, powdery falafel stuff that you would just mix with like I think water and oil and then cook it, and I loved that stuff. And I want to say there was something else, something else Middle Eastern, I believe, that I liked, again with chickpeas. And so that kind of helped me to move into eating more beans. But for a long time following the diet, to be fair, I wasn't really following the diet. I was eating a lot of grains. I was eating a lot of rice, a lot of just sandwiches with avocado, and not a whole lot of protein really, because again, I wasn't eating a lot of beans. I think I started eating hummus too. Hummus did help, but pretty much every meal I was eating grains. That was the most of my calories. I was eating some vegetables, but not his. I think at the time in the book that I had, it was like 1 pound of raw vegetables and 1 pound of cooked. I was not meeting that requirement. That was just so hard to make them tasty. Again, I didn't know how to make them tasty. And I was eating a fair amount of fruit because I liked that. It was sweet and delicious. I was eating a lot of like apples and peanut butter, that kind of thing. Long story short, my anemia got worse, really bad. So I didn't mention I was anemic prior to that. My gynecologist, again, the same one who had talked about the problem with our food pyramid, not focusing on fruits and vegetables. She had also told me one time, she was such a bitch, honestly. She was pretty awful. But yeah, she just kind of told me, like, as I was leaving, oh, by the way, you're anemic, you're iron deficient, take an iron supplement. And I was just like, what the fuck? I was like 15. I was like, what are you even talking about? How do I do this? What? And of course we get these giant, like, iron, they were huge. I remember they were huge. They were hard for me to swallow, and then they made me like super constipated, TMI, but I felt terrible, so I stopped taking them. And of course I'm 15. I didn't really understand the ramifications of any of this, so I just stopped taking the iron supplements. I didn't know that that's why I felt like shit all the time. I didn't know that's why I was so tired. I wish things had been explained to me a little bit better than they were, but whatever. Yeah, so I was already struggling with that kind of stuff, and then that just got so bad on Furman's diet. Again, not really Furman's diet. If I had been eating more beans, I don't think I would have been in the situation that I was in, because I was just focusing so much on grains, which are not a terribly good source of iron, and I wasn't taking a multi or anything. I wasn't taking B12 or anything iron. No, I was taking B12, but I wasn't taking anything else. That was the only thing I was taking. My anemia got worse. I was a pet sitter at the time, and I had to have someone in the car with me when I would drive, and I was in school too, so I was driving to school, I was driving to sits. I had to have someone in the car with me in like the afternoon, because I would fall asleep at the wheel. I had to have someone with me to keep me awake. It got so bad. I remember I had these one sit that I had that was like 25 minutes away from me too, and I had 3 of them a day, and it was just so brutal having to drive there and drive to school. And I was really upset because I didn't understand why I felt terrible. You know, I was very young, and I felt like, what the fuck? I should feel awesome all the time. I'm actually trying to eat healthy. I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm exercising like every day. And I feel so tired by like 1-2 o'clock. I'm so exhausted. I should not feel this way. So it's very disheartening to me. And so I got roped into raw foods. So I was on, I would sometimes go on I think it was the vegan bodybuilding.com, their forum. This raw food is this fruitarian, and I wish I could remember his name. He was very fit. He was black. That's like the only other defining characteristic. I know that's not helpful at all. He went on to like move to breatharianism and claim to like be working to be a breatharian, or maybe even claim that he was a breatharian. I'm not really sure. Maybe some of you know who I'm talking about, but he made a post, and it was like, here's what I ate today. And it was like a watermelon and some bananas and like some other fruit. I remember seeing it and it was like, that's crazy. But it was also really appealing to me because it was so simple. I mean, if I ate that diet, I would never have to cook, right? I could eat sweet things all the time, which I loved. I really, I was struggling again to try to eat these vegetables that just were not tasty. And I was really struggling to eat a lot of beans as well, and like to cook them and all that stuff. And just, again, the thought of just being able to eat fruit and not have to cook anything, it was really appealing. So from there, I guess I started well, from there, I think I can't remember which book I bought first. I think it was 80-10-10 that I bought, Doug Graham's 80-10-10. Actually, you know what? I think I found some blog posts first referencing it. So there were a few blogs, I can't even remember their names, and I'm sure these people are not eating raw anymore. Maybe they are, but I seriously doubt it. But there was one girl, Sarah something, and there was another girl, I can't remember her name, but those were the blogs I followed predominantly, and they talked about eating this diet, and they were really, really nice, and they seemed, you know, just down to earth and honest. And so I bought the book, and I remember it was Halloween, and I decided that for November, for 30 days, I was going to eat this diet. I was going to follow a high fruit, low fat diet. And so for Halloween, we got like pizza, you know, because no one in my family was vegan or anything. And so I ate like a bunch of pizza, and then ate a bunch of like Halloween candy that like my parents had bought like for kids coming, like not for me. And I was just like sitting there eating like a bunch of this candy. It was really sad. And that was like my big, you know, binge before eating mostly fruit for 30 days. So the 30 days came and went. Essentially, you know, I struggled during them. I remember my blender broke at some point, so I couldn't make smoothies, and that was a huge deal. I remember lamenting the fact that I caved, you know, and cheated and ate like chips and salsa or something. It was like 3 chips and some salsa, and that was like a huge deal. I actually made a blog myself at the time, and actually blogged like everything, like almost every day. I think I posted something, which is just so strange to me now. I wish I still had access to those. I would love to just get those and like read them and just do kind of a whole series and commentary on that. It would be really interesting. I don't know, maybe there's a way I can find that, but yeah, so that happened. And then I kept trying to do raw, and struggling for a while, struggling with chips and salsa. And again, it was winter time, like the worst time possible to go raw. I was eating so many oranges, drinking so much orange juice, eating like banana and raspberry smoothies. It makes me so sad to think about this now. I would have some cheat meals, you know, here and there, some cooked things, God forbid, and some non-vegan things sometimes too, because again, I still didn't really care about animals. I started to kind of use them as like this is a good reason to eat raw as well, to eat vegan as well, right? But I didn't really care, and I didn't really know much about it at all in the environment either. It's just like, oh yeah, it's just like a talking point that I didn't really care about. So that went on for a long time, and I guess I'll skip past all the bulimia and stuff like that, which did start a little bit before. It actually started before I went vegan. There were a few instances where I did throw up after eating something, before I even did ferment and stuff like that. But then it got exponentially worse when I was trying to do raw. I don't think I did it at all while I was eating ferment. I could be wrong about that. I don't think I did. But while I was raw, that's when I eventually started purging like every day. And once it got to that point was actually when I realized that I had a serious problem, and I actually told my mom, and then stopped doing it pretty soon after that. I think that's right. Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of skip over all of that stuff. You know, long story short, raw is really bad and unhealthy. I lost my period for a year and 6 months. I was kind of Looney Tunes for a little while, and I also promoted it to other people, which again is something I will always regret. I think it's important to regret things that you did that were wrong, so I don't lament the fact that I regret it, I guess is what I'm saying. I do lament the fact that I did it, and I think that's good. I think that helps keep me honest and humble, I guess. Yeah, so I'm going to skip all over that stuff and I guess get to the ethical stuff. I got my mom, she had been vegetarian for a little while, and she had been really mostly vegan. She was just eating like yogurt and cottage cheese. I think those were her 2 things. And then I got her the book Eating Animals, not to even convince her to go vegan, just because I knew she was interested in veganism and stuff. So I got her that book. I can't remember the author's name, but I bought her that. I hadn't read it myself. I just thought, oh, she would probably like this. And she read it and she was like, okay, I'm going vegan. That's it. And I was like, what? How could this one book just convince you to go vegan? Like, that's, what the hell? And like, she's like, I'm giving up the cottage cheese and yogurt and all of that. So I was like, okay, what am I missing here? So, and she talked about like the animals and factory farming and how awful it was. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I know that. And then was kind of like, well, do I though? Do I really know that? And so I actually started looking into it myself and looking at the, inherent awfulness of factory farming, debeaking, and what they do to male chicks and the tiny living quarters, the filthiness, everything else. And it's like, oh, wow, this is actually really terrible. And that's when I started thinking about veganism rather differently. And that was also when, before that, whenever I would cheat on raw, because I was still raw at the time I gave this book to my mom, sometimes I would eat non-vegan stuff. Usually it was vegan stuff. Usually it was stuff like chips and salsa, think junky vegan foods. But there were some times where like I drove to McDonald's and I would get like some chicken nuggets or something like that. Again, it wasn't incredibly frequently, but sometimes I would do that. Or I'd go to Fridays and just get like whatever. And again, this was when I was binging and purging as well. So usually it was like a huge binge where I would just like, whatever, this is the last time I'm going to do this anyway. And then tomorrow I'll be healthy and I'll never eat the stuff again, kind of thing that you tell yourself. It's very sad. But yeah, once I actually looked into the ethical side, it was like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. And it wasn't hard to give up those things anymore is the interesting thing. So at least for me personally, again, this is just an anecdote, it makes sense, when people say that it's easier to stay vegan when you keep the animals in mind than it is if you're just interested in health, right? Or even just the environment to some extent. And it makes sense, right? If it's just a diet thing, there's no moral problem there, right? It's just like, oh, this is unhealthy. But if it's actually, oh, this is wrong. This is actually wrong. So I'm cheating. I'm cheating on my diet. I'm actually doing something wrong. That's a whole different thing. And so for me, it was just like, oh, now these things are off limits, and not because I want some purity thing, but because this is actually wrong. I shouldn't be doing it, so I'm not going to do it anymore. So from that point on, it was essentially vegan overnight. I don't like to say I went vegan overnight because I had already been eating pretty much a vegan diet for a long time. And by that point, even though I was raw, I had learned to cook beans and stuff like that. And eating raw, even, I was pretty used to eating, fruits predominantly. So crazy. And some vegetables and stuff. So it's not like I went from an omnivore diet to a vegan diet overnight. So that's why I don't like to say that. But yeah, from that point on, I never intentionally ate animal products ever again. I'm trying to think when, because I got away from raw, I got my period back when I started eating more calories, and not necessarily more fat. I was still eating very low fat, but I started eating more calories. Well, when I did actually 30 bananas, when I started eating significantly more calories, I did start to have my period again. So that was good. Thanks, Freely. Yeah. And then I gained weight. See, I'm not sure if this was before I gave my mom eating animals or after. Again, I'm not really sure when this happened, but so I gained weight. I did that whole thing for about a year and a half as well, following 30 bananas a day. Not Ralto 4, this was before Ralto 4. And then was like, okay, this isn't working. So I started eating more greens, and that immediately helped me to cut back on the calories because I actually felt satisfied on like a reasonable amount of calories. So I started losing weight. I started just feeling better in general, again, feeling more full. So I would eat fruit for breakfast, fruit for lunch, fruit for snacks, but I'd have like a huge salad with some fat, like half an avocado or like an ounce of nuts or something in the evening. And then I think eventually I started adding salt to the salad, which was amazing. Before that, I used like dehydrated celery, which is not bad actually. You can dehydrate celery and make like this powder that's actually really delicious on stuff, but obviously not very convenient, not very cheap. Like a whole bunch of celery does not make that much celery powder. So yeah, started eating salt, was using, seaweed as well, like some dulse. Slowly but surely, basically came to where I am now. Lots of cooked food. Yeah, I guess that's it, really. There's a lot of other stuff in between, mostly to do, I guess, with the the raw stuff. I don't know how interesting that is. I've kind of talked about that in other videos. I think I will talk about it a little bit more in another video because I see a certain raw foodist who may be going down the path to some cooked food. Some of the things that she's doing, it's like exactly what I did. It's exactly what I've seen other former raw foodists do as well. So I may do a kind of prediction video. I don't know if you guys are interested in that. Let me know. But that was my journey from kind of omnivore to raw foodist, not really caring about animals, to ethical vegan. I guess I will say something that I've said before. You know, you don't have to understand all of the nuances of animal ethics or ethics in general, or consequentialism, deontology, all these different things that I've talked about recently in my last follow-up video regarding intersectionality, things like that. You don't have to understand all of these things to start reducing animal products or even to go vegan. And I certainly didn't understand any of this stuff. I mean, I knew about consequentialism and deontology because I'd been in philosophy in school, but even at the time I was an objectivist, which that's a whole nother thing. Yeah, so you don't have to. I didn't really understand a lot with regard to animal ethics, like barely anything. All I knew is that I saw what was happening. I learned about factory farming and what was happening to animals. And I knew I did not have to eat them to be healthy. Now, at the time, I had kind of a ridiculous view of what health was and what nutrition was. But even still, obviously, I know now that you really don't have to, based on like adequate nutrition, like what actually is adequate nutrition, which is not just eat fruits and vegetables and like maybe half an avocado. That's not adequate, obviously. My point is, I knew that it was awful what was happening to them, and I knew that I didn't have to eat them to be healthy, or their byproducts, milk and eggs and all of that. And that was it. I think I said in a recent video, if we believe that a world with less unnecessary suffering is better than a world with more unnecessary suffering, and we know that eating animals in a situation, and animal products that result in harm, in a situation in which we can eat other foods, we can eat plants, is unnecessary, then it follows that we would at least be open to veganism, right? And that's really it. And so yeah, obviously over the years I have learned more about ethics and taken the time, which I think is important because obviously I have a channel and I talk about these things. I think it is important for me to know more about this stuff than like the average vegan or the average person. I guess that's it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I didn't make any notes for this video, so I'm not sure how great it's gonna be, but maybe a little bit interesting. And again, I will talk a little bit more about the raw stuff in my little prediction video, so that should be really fun. And yeah, if you have any comments or questions, leave those down below. If you have any of your own kind of journey to vegan story, I would love to hear it. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll have a new video soon.